Hello and welcome back to Riverland Women, the podcast which celebrates the amazing achievements and inspiring stories of women across South Australia's Riverland and Mallee. I'm Kerrie Lush from the podcast station. I'm a journalist, radio broadcaster and podcast producer and mentor. In this episode of Riverland Women, we meet Rachel McLeod. From the ballet stage in Melbourne to the classroom and the founder of a successful dance school in the Riverland, Rachel is all about supporting her students to strive for excellence in whatever they do. At the end of 2025, Rachel handed on the reins to her dance school and she and her family moved to Adelaide. But she's left such a legacy in the region, I thought it was important to recognise her through Riverland Women. This is Rachel's story.
So I grew up in Adelaide, and the most profound memories are probably of dance, and that was certainly an all-consuming hobby, love, passion. I attended a beautiful dance school, Cheryl Bradley Dance Studios in Adelaide, and probably did about 15 hours to 20 hours of training a week after school. I was really fortunate in my high school years. My parents allowed me to go to Charles Campbell Secondary, and we had an amazing dance teacher at school as well. So all my girlfriends, my best friends, my kids that really got me were at the studio, and so the studio was really home. And I started teaching there when I was 13, private lessons, assisting my teacher from probably about the age of 10. So teaching has always been a really big part of me. And I remember she said to me, "Rachel, you're a teacher." And I was like, okay, we'll see. But I really wanted to dance. And my high school teacher actually took us to Melbourne on a trip, all the dance girls, and we attended lessons at about 5 schools that offered full-time dance. And I came home and I said, I really want to go. And I guess my best friend at the time, she was 15, I was 16. She'd auditioned for the Aussie Ballet and she was going. And I wasn't into ballet. I loved ballet, but it wasn't going to be my main focus. It was always performing arts based. And I really found a school that I thought was great during our visit in Melbourne, and I wanted to audition. So that's probably how the journey sort of progressed for me. I auditioned for a couple courses, got into both, chose the one that I thought best aligned. And I lived with my best friend in Melbourne at 16, and we had a bedroom each and a lounge room, and we lived within a ladies' home, so we weren't completely independent, but we did all of our dinners and our washing, and so that was a really formative part of my early teens.
So you would have had to grow up pretty quickly then.
It was huge. So even things like navigating the tram system, budgeting, money. My parents supported me financially for those first couple of years, which was, of course, a strain on them as well with 4 children at home. But I would dance between 40 to 50 hours a week. So I was quite young, didn't get a job. I was completing year 12 by correspondence at that time as well. But I have to say I was probably a bit of a nerd, didn't really seek to do anything particularly interesting other than dance, recover, do my homework, spend time with my girlfriend. And she was very studious as well. She was a great inspiration to me at all times. She was just an incredible person. So, and very focused on her art. So we weren't really doing anything extraordinarily interesting apart from, studying. I think one of the things that stands out is one memory I had, I did get quite unwell and I had to get the tram to the doctor, but I was really quite sick. And I just remember thinking, oh God, I wish I had my mum here, got to get homesick. Mum would send a sister to me for weeks at a time just to spend time with me, and that was amazing.
So you didn't really live it up in Melbourne or play up. It was pretty focused on what you were doing. What was the dance school you were with there?
I went to Dance World 301. It was definitely all-consuming and very intense. I was the second youngest in the course. I came to find lots of people from interstate. So we all had a similar bond around missing home. They were that bit older than me, between 18 to 20. So I formed really great relationships and they looked after me really beautifully as well. So that we were all very focused though. there really wasn't much interesting happening. In the second year of the course, I did move closer to school, and I lived in an apartment with other dancers in my course, and it was 50-meter walk to the school, so that was excellent. But that year I did also begin to work in hospitality, and that was a great outlet, actually. I loved it. I ended up being trained in fine dining and worked at some beautiful places and had great experience in that industry as well. So, yeah, it took me on a slightly different journey. But
So dance was obviously always a part of your life. Where did that early passion come from?
I remember my mum said it started off so innocently. My older sister attended a class at a really local slightly smaller dance school. Mum said it used to cost $2 a class, and so I would come in the pram, but then I'd start to stand up and want to dance and tap. And then as we got a little bit more serious, we went to a more classical ballet focused, had that both streams, but the other school didn't really have ballet, and that's always been a really important base. So it just grew from there, and I loved performing. I loved the discipline. I loved practicing and seeing improvement. So it was very self-driven. My parents supported me, paid, I can't even imagine how much money they had spent on dance over the years. But I was very dedicated to it as well. So I think that they supported that.
So you were in Melbourne. How long was the course that you did?
It was 2 years. And then I was always quite short, and the dance industry has happily changed quite a bit. But when I was in my course, it was always the taller girls that would get selected for auditions and things like that. And I remember it was a really cutthroat environment, and being a bit younger, it was hard. I needed to build a thicker skin, and I definitely had strengths, but I was always short. And I remember, I think I weighed 55 kilos at the time. I was very fit. But the head of the course, she said to me, we used to get called by our surnames, not our first names. And she said, Stevens, you're a great dancer, but until you lose weight, I'm not going to look at you. And she said, you're too hippie. You've got the Greek butt, and I've got a Greek heritage, which was kind of funny. And I just remember thinking, I went to a dietitian. I really tried to streamline what I was doing. There were other kids in the course, using alternate methods to lose weight, and I knew I didn't want to do that. So I never really reached, I think, what they wanted of me, and I learned to kind of be okay with that. And I was at that time, I guess, branching out. I started to see other parts of the world. Like I said, I was fine dining restaurants, and they weren't judging me on that, and that felt really nice. And always in the back of my head, I thought, well, if I want to teach, that's not going to be an issue. But the course really did teach me in a very deep way what a good teacher does and what a bad teacher does. And I think that really influenced strongly what I did at RMDS. It wasn't a conscious choice of, well, that teacher said this to me, I won't use those words. But it was very much just built within my core about how I felt and what made me feel good, or like I could try harder, or what would kind of dampen that down. Because what I did take away from dance and those really tricky experiences and examinations that I did, I loved exams, but it really taught me how to deal with pressure. And it taught me so many other things in relation to dedication, goal setting, perseverance. And that was the key that I wanted RMDS to have. That was the influence that I wanted to have over these kids. It wasn't, I'm preparing you to be in the Australian Ballet School. It was never about that. And I pretty quickly learned that the Riverland, that was a perfect fit, because sports are huge here. I intended to run a few classes on a Saturday morning. Now, soon found out that really didn't fit within the culture here. It needed to be weekdays because there's so much sport. So I adapted. But what became very obvious was that the core values that I was teaching and teaching from, it wasn't verbalized, but they got a sense of how I spoke to their children, what their children felt after class. That was the connection that they loved.
So let's go to those steps in between. from finishing your course in Melbourne,
Mm-hmm.
what did you do next?
So next, I actually met my husband. I was just 18, 19. We met, we worked in a hotel together, and I, at the same time, started working for Westpac, which was really random. But I just kind of wanted something that was really 9 to 5, stop the hospitality for a bit. Let's get into something more traditional. I actually loved working there and ended up in their training and development team. So again, back to teaching. So that was really interesting. So hubby and I, we decided, he was actually originally from Adelaide, but had moved. He has a dad, his dad is in Canada. He was in Canada, came back to Melbourne. We met, and then I said I'd really like to go back to Adelaide, and he was open to that. His mum was there, his grandparents were there, and so we moved back home. I continued to work for Westpac in Adelaide for a while, and he continued in hospitality for a long time. And then I was in the teaching development team, and I thought, here's this teaching thing again. It keeps coming up, and I thought, let me go get my ballet qualifications. I've worked in RAD all my life, Royal Academy of Dance. I had started it in Melbourne. Let's finish it. And so I rang Terry Simpson, who is a examiner in Adelaide of RAD, has probably best ballet school in Adelaide. I'll put it out there. But she was a mentor and a teacher in this program. And I said, can I please come and teach with you? We had to teach over, I think, 300 to 400 hours with a mentor. And she said, come and meet me. And so I met her in Adelaide, and we just got along like a house on fire. And she said, you're very welcome to come and teach for me. I said, thank you. It wasn't a paid position. I was assisting her, which I had done when I was, from the age of around 10, but I needed to really get these hours up, and I wanted to soak in everything that this incredible woman was saying, because she was just so knowledgeable. And that turned into a 8 to 10 year teaching relationship, where I then started teaching her jazz for her. And it was a matter of weeks after she rang me and she said, my jazz teacher's going, I need you to teach. Easy. That was my field. Bam, did it. And I look back at some of my choreo in those beginning stages, and I thought she was so gentle with me. She let me develop. She let me grow. She let me learn with her dancers, who were just these technical, amazing dancers, and I'll be forever grateful for that. So I got my qualifications while with her, but at the same time, from that initial meeting, she rang me that night and she said, Jason Smart wants you. He needs you to teach in Murray Bridge. And I had known Jason as a figure growing up, again, another amazing dance person in Adelaide. And I thought, I'd love to. It was jazz tap, the range. And it was 9 till 4 at Murray Bridge on a Saturday. I didn't have my license at this point. And I said, let me just ask my mum and dad if they'll drive me. I'm 20 at this point. They're like, we love Jason. Absolutely, we'll drive you. And again, I met with Jason. He goes, I know your face. I know you. I've seen you at comps, everywhere. I'd love to have you. And I said, well, I'd love to teach for you. I taught for him for 10 years.
Did you eventually get your license?
I got my license as soon as that was really the push. Because in Melbourne, it's
Don't
not,
need it.
and I'll be honest, it wasn't the easiest for me to pass those stupid L's. I kept messing it up. But then once I got into the practical side, it was fine. So God bless mum and dad drove me, I think, for the first 6 months, and then off I went. But established beautiful relationships with all those kids. So again, here I am teaching, and I'm like, okay, well, I really love this. They love me. We've got a great rapport. And then I discovered something called footsteps dance, and a girlfriend who was teaching at Terry Simpson's started working for Footsteps. And I thought, well, I could probably do that in the day, teach at the studios at night. That could be really fun. Gave up Westpac, started to work for Footsteps. Great, enjoyed it. But now I'm in the school environment, and I'm about 22, 23 at this point. I kind of really like school. Maybe I'm smart enough to be a teacher. And I am smart enough, but I always had put myself in this category, I'm a dancer, and it's a different intelligence. I probably couldn't do that. And being in this school environment, I was like, I could totally do this. So I said to my mum and dad, I was like, I think I need to go to uni. I said to Glenn, I think I need to go to uni. And he said, well, go for it. Absolutely. And my parents just said, just finish it. And I said, okay, let's see how we go. I thought, I'm going to be 4 years older anyway. Why not? So off I went to uni, quick footsteps, was just teaching at the studios, and actually I got a part-time job at the casino. Again, into hospitality. I was in the fine dining, not the fine dining, the high rollers room. So the hours were overnight, but I loved it. And I met awesome people there.
That would have been some interesting times.
Fascinating.
Did you have to be secret squirrel of who came in?
And like a lot of the time we wouldn't know necessarily names, but we might have a travelling junket from China come through. We had definite regulars that came through from Melbourne all the time. But millions and millions of dollars in a night you'd see across a table, and it was just fascinating to see how it didn't look like money anymore once it changed into those little shiny chips, But my friends and I who were working, we just had the best time together, and we would earn tips and we'd share our tips.
Yeah. Did you get some good tips?
We got great tips. And so the way the system used to work back then, we would all pool the tips, and then at the end of the night it would work out into an hourly rate. Okay, you worked 6 hours, you worked 10, you'd get this hourly rate, which was a brilliant way to do it because we just supported each other, and we knew certain people would get better tips off certain people, so we'd send those. But we were up to all hours. We were, it was 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. kind of area, and so you get a bit silly, you get funny, like it was just the best time.
Bit delirious after a few hours,
yeah, and we just had fun. We just had so much fun together.
What was your best night in tips? So what was some of the biggest bets
I remember,
that you saw?
Some of the biggest bets would be over 200,000, and this is in, a game of baccarat, which takes probably anywhere from 90 seconds to 2 minutes for one hand.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's just a continual rollover of money, and it's, like I said, you get a little bit desensitized. It's obviously not my money, but just it doesn't look like money. It looks like toys. So it's just fascinating, the mindset. Yeah, but I loved it. We had the best time.
Anyone that comes to mind that people might know that came through?
No, not in that sense of sort of famous people, more local business people and that type of thing. Yeah.
And visitors.
Yeah. People that own things in Crown Casino can't gamble there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
So we'll fly them in.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was just a great time. Really fun. So I did that while I was studying my teaching degree. And Glenn and I had been married probably at that time. We got married quite young for already 3 or 4 years, 5 years. And we were trying to have a baby, and it wasn't happening. And so we started IVF at that time as well. And we did lose a baby, and then we did conceive Eli through IVF while I was at the casino. So studying, pregnant, at the CAS. And
teaching dance as well.
Yeah. And then I stopped the dance just as I was getting pregnant with him. And I graduated with my gown and my cap with a massive belly. And I think he was born 2 weeks later. So that was a real achievement. And the first in my family out of the 4 kids to graduate uni. So I was thrilled, yeah. It was a really good feeling.
And then what next? You had Eli.
We had Eli.
Life with the newborn.
Yeah. And then we thought, well, I'll just do some TRT work for a little bit, which was great. Really enjoyed it. In fact, my very first TRT day, you're not going to believe it, was at my primary school in the classroom where I was a year 1 and 2 student. And that was really full circle and beautiful. But through my placements, I sort of had worked out that Catholic Ed was really a place I wanted to be. I really wanted to work in Catholic education. It just aligned with heaps of my values, and I felt really I just felt such comfort in all the Catholic ed schools I was in. So that was in the back of my mind. Couldn't really get a contract in Adelaide. It was at that time, 15 to 16 years ago, teachers did not walk into permanency. Teachers were desperate to get a contract. And my sister is a nurse, and she had moved up here with her husband, who was a policeman. He had graduated from the academy and moved up here. And so I said to Glenn, what if we went country for a bit and I'll see if I can get a contract? Because I was ready to be settled at that point. Eli was about 18 months and I really wanted to get into my teaching. Dance had sort of been put on the back burner, and I think you go through phases of burnout with things as well, and I was really ready just to have a little break from it. So I applied and I got a role at OLAW in Berry, and that was my first full-time class, and I had a 1-2 class, and they were like, if you could have a dream class, that would be it. Like, they were just beautiful and had an amazing principal. Loved it. So toward the end of that year, our principal said, there's people coming back from mat leave. There's no jobs here. I said, okay, that's all right. By this point, I was comfortable and I sort of knew the 4 Catholic schools in the area. I said to Glenn, I can easily TRT. If I put my resume in at these 4 schools, I can guarantee I'll have full-time work because TRTs are so needed. So we had resigned ourselves to that was a great plan. So we said, well, let's go and get one of our frozen embryos because while I'm TRTing, that all aligns really well. Paid for our cycle, did all the bloods, did everything we needed to do. Then a job came up at Red Market St. Joe's, full-time permanent, in 3-4, which is my sweet spot for, I really love 3, 4, 5, 6. And I thought, well, if anything, I'll meet the principal. There's usually a permanent person lined up at the school already. To be honest, back in those days, that's how it worked. Let me meet this principal and let's just see, I can maybe TRT. So we've got the IVF going on in the background, but not really thinking about it. Often they don't work. That's happened before. But let's go for this job. Go for the job. Feel great rapport with Donnie. Felt really comfortable, but walked away again thinking someone's got that job already. I didn't think about it too much more. It was time to test for pregnancy, and I went through so many tests. It was just crazy, but they were negative. And I thought, well, this is the path. Maybe I'll get this job. Donnie rings me. We'd love to have you full-time permanent. I cried. I couldn't believe it. I just felt like this is wonderful. This is just great. About 3 days later, I'm still peeing on sticks and I get a positive. So I think, I'm going to rock up to that school about 20 weeks pregnant. This is interesting. But because we'd lost a baby before, I said to Glenn, let's just get a heartbeat first on a scan. Then I need to meet this principal again because I need to feel comfortable and honest, and I had such great support from the principal I did have at OLAW. I was crying and she said, this is a blessing. You need to be happy. This is great. If it works out, you'll get maternity leave. You're safe. You're secure. This is to be celebrated. And that made me feel wonderful because I don't think it's so much now, but I feel like back then when permanency was so scarce, I think there was a little bit of maybe not judgment might be the wrong word, but, oh, great, now you're pregnant. You've just,
got the permanent job and you're going.
Yeah. But even for us to get pregnant, it was such a struggle that overrid anything, So we do the scan, get a heartbeat. Gosh, we better meet with Donnie. So I go in and I say, listen, I'm pregnant. He's like, oh, okay, what would you like to do? I said, well, I need to work. I want to work. Fabulous, no worries. He was great. So arrive at school, loved it, felt at home, felt that was where I needed to be, but I did get quite sick in Clara's pregnancy. I was sort of having kind of seizure type activity, but I could hear what was going on, but I couldn't communicate and I would convulse. And so the first episode, I was about 22 weeks pregnant. Would you believe we were lining up for our teacher photo, like the actual school photo? And it's funny because where I am now in that wellbeing room and that space that I've created with Linda, is where it happened. And Tony, one of the other teachers, this was before he had children and he wasn't married or anything. And I actually kind of fell onto him as I was having a fit, and he was just such a bloke at the time. He was kind of like, what's going on here, but we laugh about it now. So I had this seizure at school, waiting for the school photo, and then I just never really got 100% well again. I had got Ross River fever about 6 weeks into our move here, and the doctors did later say they think that had potentially had a bit of an impact on my overall health with the pregnancy, kind of really stirred things up. So my heart wasn't pumping fast enough and pumping blood up to my brain fast enough, so I was getting these seizures. My sister, who's a nurse, was with me. We needed to go for an MRI in Adelaide, and I actually had another seizure right there in front of a neurologist in the women's and kids. Got full coded. The baby was always happy. The baby was fine, but they were worried about her, thinking it was preeclampsia or something like this. So they took me to Flinders for 2 weeks, and I actually just stayed in Flinders for 2 weeks so they could suss out what was going on, and it ended up being this sort of blood pressure issue. So I sort of said to Donnie, I don't think I can teach, because if this happens in front of the kids, it's really going to scare them. But also I'm exhausted. It was almost like a chronic fatigue at that point. So I went on mat leave a little bit early, had Clara, which was all great. She was fine. And then I went back to school again. So it kind of kept going through this pattern. And then because Clara was born, I started thinking about dance again. And I thought I'd really love our little girl just to have that experience that I had, not for a career, but for all of the great things that it brought out. So I said to Donnie, I just want to teach 1 or 2 classes. It's just going to be on a Saturday morning. It's not going to impact my teaching. But what we soon found was there was a real need. And I went to the children's market and did a little stall set up, and I had 90 children on day one ready to dance. And they were all younger because I think my oldest was probably 13. But hey, let's give it a go. We hired a hall, and suddenly, we had all of these little dancers rocking up, smiling, happy, ready to take class.
On Saturday morning, was that was behind the Uniting Church Hall there?
Yes, that's right. And then I did Friday nights with my older kids, and then Saturdays with the littler ones. But then they started asking for more things. They wanted hip hop, they wanted tap, they wanted jazz. It really grew quickly. And then I really randomly, I said to my sister, my uterus feels pregnant. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's really weird. Clara was just 1 and I was still breastfeeding. It was really weird. Did a pregnancy test and I got pregnant naturally. And we just were in shock because this was not in the plan. We still had embryos left, and we always made a deal, no embryo left behind. But we got pregnant naturally, and that was really weird. So by the end of my first year of RMDS, I was about 6 months pregnant with Asher. So we had to sort of make a plan for March when I am off, who's going to teach, because I was the only teacher. I had Dana, who was 10, assisting me. But then I was really fortunate. I had a couple friends, a friend Julie, she was a school teacher but had danced, and she covered for me while I was pregnant. When I was when Asher was just a tiny newborn. So the school continued. People understood. I always said to Glenn, he was holding the fort down here. But I said, if you can't settle him, just bring the baby. It doesn't matter. The kids don't care. It didn't happen often, actually. But the lifestyle of being able to be at home with the kids during the day really appealed to me. And so I said to Donnie, I'm going to have to stop. I'll be at home with the kids in the day. I'll pop out to teach for a couple of hours at night. Glenn's here. And that's what we did for a number of years. So it worked well for our family, especially when they were little. It was really nice to be at home with them in the daytime.
And then get out of witching hour at night.
I did. Yes, I was quite lucky.
Well planned, well planned.
Although they were all breastfed, so often it would just be a quick feed before. But that was lovely to come home to as well, feed them to sleep, and then off they went. So
you outgrew that church hall.
And then we found it was, what is it now? It's the Dollar Curtains and Blinds now. And it was previously...
It was the gym, wasn't
it?
Yeah,
there was a gym in there.
Vitality gym.
Vitality.
Yeah.
So it had mirrors in there and it had a sprung carpet kind of floor. And I researched, how we could put dance floor down on top of that. So we did that and we painted, and it was one studio with a teeny tiny room out the back for waiting. But it was great. It worked really well. Again, I was really the only one teaching. So I didn't need two studios. And then I got pregnant with Hazel. Again, we were very lucky, and she wasn't IVF, but we were very blessed and happy. And by this point, the dance family knew the drill. Oh, she's pregnant again. That's great. Off we go. But when Hazel was a newborn, she was born in the December, one of my old students from Murray Bridge, who had gone on to get her dance qualifications, she would drive up every Tuesday to teach for me, Shay. And I was so grateful. And sometimes she'd sleep here at night and stay with us for the night. I'd watch her grow up too, just like Dana. She had assisted me, and then she found her way back to me and supported me when I was needing it. And it was incredible to have her. And I loved having other teachers. I just loved being able to share the load, but to be able to collaborate with them. And dance has always, for me, been that really supportive network of women or men coming together, mainly women. Jason is a great exception to that. To this day, he is still a really strong supporter of mine, and he was at my wedding, and, I love him dearly. And then Dana became older. She actually went and got dance qualifications, and in year 10, she started to teach her own classes, which was amazing. And then randomly, I just started attracting people who'd moved up from Adelaide that were school teachers, but were also dancers and had taught dance. So Ruth came into my world about 7 years ago, and I said, just get to know me, see how I run it, but maybe you could teach some. And then I had Jade. She's actually a teacher at OLAW, but she had always been a really amazingly strong tap teacher and a beautiful tapper. And she took my class, my advanced class, and instantly I was like, oh, girl, can you teach? So she'd do a few classes, and it just grew from there. But having those girls behind me was just the best. And then Chloe, amazing hip hopper, Frozzo, amazing tapper, but an all-rounder. As they got older, I was, you want to teach? Yeah, they did. And they taught like me. And it wasn't that we're all different. I don't need them to be like me, but they had the same values, the same approach. And that's what made us really cohesive.
So then you moved locations again. Another couple of children in there as well.
That's it. So what had happened was we'd had Hazy, and then the building, we kind of outgrew it, because at this point I'm like, well, if Dana can teach, we need two studios running at the same time, because we don't want to be up here until 9 o'clock teaching. I want to be home by 7:30. Let's smash out these classes, two studios at the same time. So we found the place, used to be next to the Baker's Delight, but where it is now in the Chafee Colonnades. And it was actually two buildings. It was open space. We had amazing help from Ryan Del Zoppo. He actually built the walls in there for us to turn it into a 2-studio space and a waiting room. So once again, in go the mirrors. The parents help us fundraise. In go the mirrors, in go the sprung floors, in go the ballet bars. 2 studios running at a time, but with that beautiful, just a sliding door between them. Because keep in mind, Dana was still pretty young at this point. Her mum would actually come in and watch her teach. Gail's also obviously an educator. So she would watch her teach and help her with little ones as needed. But then as she was getting older, I was just that sliding door away. So that was just great. So then we had the 2 spaces running, which was just a dream. I love having them next door. And that we'd go, do you want to see this? Check this out, So, yeah, it became really a beautiful, cohesive family that just operated. Someone was sick. Oh, I'm there. Someone needed covering. Oh, Dana's on placement. Let's lock in. What are we doing? I'm sick. I'm pregnant. Whatever it is, we were able to support each other.
So where did you end up with RMDS? How many students did you have? What sort of genres were you teaching?
At the height, so if you think about COVID and the impact that sort of had on us, it was massive. We, at the beginning of COVID, had 200 kids. And taking multiple classes, we don't have a load of kids just doing one. Most will do ballet and jazz, ballet and hip hop and jazz, tap, whatever it might be. But they take multiple classes, which is great for us because their skill just develops so much more quickly. So 200 with COVID. COVID hit. That was like the most scary thing as a sole business owner. I didn't have school at that time. If it weren't for the government assistance, that would have folded. And I was in a long lease. That was extremely scary for us. I had actually, and it was weird, in the September of 2019, I said to Glenn, the kids are getting a bit older. I'm just going to do a bit of TRT whilst I've got the school, because I had staff at this point, so it wasn't so cumbersome, and I'd worked out really good office systems that did invoicing, and over the 10 years that I'd had it at that time, or 9 years, I developed those things. So we were kind of in a good place as far as input of time. So I thought I'll just renew my reg, and I had done that in the September, and then we were in lockdown by January. So it was suddenly like, okay, we're going to need this. And then, so we did get through COVID. We did some classes on Zoom and things initially, which was okay, but it's not the same. And it gets a little bit, outdated. Kids get bored. It's not the same as being in the studio. So we got through it. And then we returned definitely with less kids, for sure. And I think a part of that was some families feeling financial strain after COVID and the impact that it had on their jobs. We forget a little bit, but remember, it was only essential workers that were allowed to work. So I fully understood that. Or they had just decided during the break, I don't really want to go back right now. And that was fine too, So we started back with less, but then we noticed a bounce back, I reckon, around 23. It started to come back again. So during that time, I had said to Donnie, I can do a bit, and then I was happy to have something a bit more structured. And he said, I've got a teacher moving from Roxby, and you could do 2 days in a 4-5 class. And I thought, I love that age group. Great, let's do it. And that was Chrissy. And we became such good friends, and we related to each other on so many levels, and we just got along straight away. So that was great. We were at St. Joe's feeling good, but also had the studio with staff helping me. So it was a good balance. Kids are getting older all the time while this is happening, and we had one embryo left, and we had that rule, no embryo left behind, and I was 39 at this point, and we just did not think it would work at all. But then Flynn came along. So I remember going back into Donnie's office and closing the door, and he's like, oh boy.
I know what's coming.
I said, I feel like we've been here before. And he's like, you're not. Yep, I'm pregnant. And he laughed and supported me, and, same old. We had actually planned it just in case it worked to be after the concert, which we'd done with Hazel as well.
I was going to say, yeah, you have done quite good timing with around concerts.
We did, and with Hazy, she was a natural one, but we said, well, if it works, it'll be just after the concert. And so both of those, they had their birthdays a day apart, the 9th and 10th of December, but that's exactly why. But yeah, so I was teaching at Joe's, we had Flynn, and all the time the kids are getting older, and that was great. Eli had transitioned to high school, and that was all fine. His interest in music had started to become really at the forefront, and he was doing lessons, but reminded me a little bit of me practicing in my room, dancing. You know, he spends a lot of hours doing it independently. So that was growing and that was great. But I guess what stood out more was our third child, Asher, who had autism diagnosed at 5. He started to struggle quite a bit. And I could see that the traditional classroom was really tricky for him, but not just him, a lot of children who are on the spectrum or were neurodiverse. Piqued my interest, and I was actually on maternity leave with Flynn, and Donnie said, what are we going to do? We're struggling here. And I said, well, what are we going to do? Let's research, let's learn, let's try this, try that, alongside with his teachers who were amazing. And then I said to Glenn, I think I need to do my master's. I need to help these kids. And that became another focus, because my own child really needed help. And I was like, right, let's lock and load. And I discovered myself, I love learning about it. I loved being able to teach these kids, reach these kids, understand these kids, get close to them to understand their behaviours and the whys of it. And Donnie said, why don't you come and do the inclusive ed role at school? Absolutely, I'm there. Loved it. So I'm in my 4th year in that role now, chipping away at that master's ever so slowly, but it's tricky with everything that's on the plate. But then, so Ash, tricky, thinking, what are we going to do with him at high school? It's going to be, we need to be closer to Adelaide, a lot of trips to Adelaide for specialist appointments and things. So we started to open our minds to the idea we might need to be closer for long-term support. So that's what led me to then think, well, he's going to transition to year 7. I think the time is now. Eli's music interest is really strong. Let's get him into a school that's got that availability to him. So that's sort of what prompted our move. And after 14 years, it's a lot. It's a lot to close chapters. I guess in my mind, I had assumed the worst, that the studio would sort of fold. And what was sad about that was the children that wanted to dance, that loved it there. But I knew Dana had just graduated from her teaching degree and that she wouldn't be able to take it on board. But Ruth, who's also a teacher and had been with me for 7 years, she said, hang on a minute. Hang on, I can do this. I can lead us. We can do this together. So I told the staff on the Tuesday night, and I announced it to the families on the Tuesday night, because even though Ruth wasn't sure, like, it was very fresh news for her. We hadn't had anything technically in place, and I didn't announce that she was interested. I just had to announce our move because our home was going to go on sale. The school was going to be announcing that I'm leaving. You know, all of these things we needed to start sharing publicly because we wanted it to come from us, not from people hearing from others. And I do have some young staff that needed to process the information, and I didn't expect them to keep quiet per se. It's a lot to ask of teenagers. And so we announced that, but then Ruth and I worked together behind the scenes and we got everything in place, and she was able to pull together the team that we've got. And with additionally some of our advanced students going, well, I can do this. My sister's like, well, I can teach the adult tap. So together they've really worked it out to cover where I was. And that's just massive blessing. Like, wow, those kids still get to go to the same studio. We don't have to, you know, just the thought of ripping up the floors, taking those mirrors, like, that's really heartbreaking. But to be able to see the signage has changed now, you know, it's bittersweet. Clara and I went in there before it happened and we cried and cried. But it's amazing that it can continue.
That's what I sort of thought when I heard that you were leaving. I thought, oh, those 150 plus students that are so dedicated and so passionate about dance. I did wonder.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, what a hit to the community.
huge. And that's a lot of pressure as well. But I got so many letters from my kids, from the students. And one of the students, she wrote, "I always knew you were a good mum. And by you doing this proves that." And I just thought, oh, she gets it. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Whew. We've cried so much, but it's happy as well. And someone else said to me, "You have a gift of making opportunities for others too." And I look at Ruth, and without that opportunity, it's nothing she would have sought. But I'm seeing her blossom, and I'm seeing her lead, and oh, it's beautiful. I'm always one, when we lift others up, it's such a success on both of us. If you win, I win. It doesn't need to be competitive. It doesn't need to be catty. It doesn't need to be but I. It's a we, and that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing my younger teachers step up. Ruth go, "Well, I'm the leader. I've got this." And God bless her. Like, she knew it would be an emotional time. She did little things that just supported me. Things like she put on our seesaw group. She excluded me from the post, and I appreciate, she's just so thoughtful. She excluded me from the post, but it said, if you need things answered in concert time, this is my phone number. Don't ask Rachel. She let me be in a place where I could experience the whole thing emotionally, to close my chapters that I had, reflection, the pride, I look at the kids, she allowed me to process that in a really beautiful way.
How was that last concert?
Incredible.
There would have been tears for sure.
And there were a lot of tears in the week leading up. That's my last ballet class. That's my last tap class. But on the day, there were tears, but there was gratefulness and joy, pride. I did this from scratch. I built this from scratch. That's insane. But it goes to show, and I love that parents would say, "You've been a great role model for our girls." Like, you show them, if you put your mind to it, you can do it. There's actually nothing you can't do. And that's been, again, that underlying tone throughout the school. So if you want to be the best stay-at-home mum that ever was, you can do that. If you want to be a pediatrician, you can do that. If you want to be a pilot, you can do that. Take the skills that you've learned here, the skills of dedication, rehearsal, get back up again, and apply it to other things. Remember the pressure you were under when you performed in front of 500 people? Take that to your job interview and present yourself well. Hold it together, because you can. You've been here before. So all of those things that I was teaching, I was seeing on that last day. So that was pretty incredible. It's a lot. And I keep saying it's a lot. You can't really summarize it in a few words or sentences, because I feel like I've got such, you build relationships over time. I look at the 17-year-old, but I remember the 3-year-old that came to me and has been with me. It's different from school teaching in that manner. Yes, you might see children around the school, but these were kids I'm seeing every week for class and correcting, and it's personal. So you can't help but love them, and their parents see that, and that's really, really special.
So what's next? Is dance still going to feature in your move to Adelaide?
Not at the moment. A few people have said, "Are you going to open another one?" No, I won't. And it's been a beautiful chapter, but it's not where I need to be anymore. My children need me at home. My husband needs me at home. I've had already my mentor, Terry Simpson, and another school in Adelaide in the hills. Can you come and teach for us? And I just can't. I'm full-time at St. Francis College in Mount Barker in my inclusive ed role, and I'll be teaching some Year 6 classes as well. I need to do that, and I need to finish my master's, and I need to do what I need to do to support our kids. Because Donnie had actually once said to me, your kids, when they get older, they actually need you more. And I didn't discount him at all. I was like, oh, okay, but I couldn't really relate to it yet. But I do agree. As they get older, they need you more. They actually need me at home to download the day. The teenagers' brains switch on at 9 o'clock at night, and they want to talk to you at 9 o'clock at night when I want to go to bed. So all of those things, we need just to be in our home routine and do that for a while. It feels right.
Rachel, well done on creating such a legacy here in the Riverland, and all the best for your future. And thank you for having a chat to me on Riverland Women.
Thank you. I appreciate being asked. I think you do an amazing job. So really honoured. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. That was Rachel McLeod, founder of the former Rachel McLeod Dance Studio in Renmark. Thanks for listening to Riverland Women. I'd love it if you could share this episode to help more people find the podcast. You can also follow Riverland Women and my business, The Podcast Station, on Facebook or Instagram, or check out my website at thepodcaststation.com.au.